Kia ora and welcome to a Yarn Live special edition Talanoa Live. And of course, it is Tongan Language Week, so let's kick it off with a big malo lele and welcome our special guest, Te Pūoho, or TP, as we will call him probably more quickly throughout the show, with a double vowel back-to-back, which apparently gets a lot of people. So hopefully I got it right first time. See if I can get better through the day. But thank you for being on our show today. We're going to go through quite a cool range of cool stuff with you. But if you could first of all, please introduce yourself.
Kia ora, Ryan.
Oh, I was going to say, there's something important I forgot. I got excited. So shall I go for it?
Go for it, mate.
Okay. Kia ora e te whānau, kua taimai na kite tau toko e tēne papa. E kore e mimiti nā mihi. E tēne koutou, tēne tātou katoa. So that was hopefully reasonable, and that is a general mihi that I have been taught by my kaiako, Turakau Bartlett, from Ngāti Whātua Orokai. And it's the first time I've actually had the confidence to roll it out with your support from our chat earlier. So now, please, if I could invite you to introduce yourself to everybody.
Fantastic. Well, ngā mihi ki a koe, Ryan. O tira ki a koutou ngā kai whakarongo, ngā kai mātakitaki. Ko wai nei e mihi atu nei, ko whitirei a te maunga, ko ngā tai parirua te awa, ko kapiti te mautere, ko tōrangatira te whare, ko tōrangatira te tupuna, ko Ngāti toa te iwi, ko te rauparaha te tangata. Ko tēnei, ko te Pūoho kā tēnei mihi atu nei ki a koutou, Māori ora ki a koutou i wainganui ngā pēhitanga o tēnei wā. Tēnā koutou. Kia ora everyone, my name is Te Pūoho Kātene. I hail from Ngāti Toa, Ngāti Whātua, and Ngāti Tama. And as is custom in our way, we first give our considerations to those who have passed on. Our particular thoughts are to the whānau of the kuia who recently passed away with COVID, and also to those who are recovering in hospital, both from COVID as well as the horrible experience that we've had in Tamaki recently. Ka nui te aroha ki a koutou. And Ryan, ka huri taku whakaaro ki a koe tēnei wā, so I turn to you, my host. First, I just want to say it's great to hear you. This month is Mahuru Māori, or the month that we try to speak to Reo Māori as much as we can. And as I said before the show, effort is far more important than perfection. So I absolutely big mihi to you for putting yourself out there and giving it a go. So thanks for opening us in that way.
Thank you very much. And yes, I think it was almost a year ago that I think it was a different month, but Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. And just as that was coming to an end and I'd run through, I think, 35 interviews, I came across you and wanted to get you on, and you politely said, let's give it a little bit of breathing space, and for good reason. But before we get on to COVID, I thought, this is a great opportunity for everybody, because I feel inspired when I look at your profile of what you've done and achieved. And as I said, I like to put the elephant on the table sometimes. So for the rangatahi who are out there thinking, oh, I can't do that, I've never seen anyone else do that. You've done so much. And I would love for you to take us through a bit of a walk of your 2 degrees, University at Stanford, the Obama Foundation, and all the steps that have led to this point today to inspire everybody, but especially a rangatahi who will think, wow, if he's done that, I can give what I want to do a go.
Awesome. Well, I will start off with a disclaimer, a cultural disclaimer, in that we often stick very tightly to the saying, kaore te kūmara e kōrero ki tōna reka. That is, the sweet potato speaks not of its own sweetness. So it is with some reticence that we talk about our own accomplishments. But as you say, our rangatahi can't be what they can't see. And so it is part of coming to terms with this that it is with reluctance, but I think it's an important part to make sure that we can show people these pathways forward. So I'm born and raised in Porirua, down in Wellington, in my hometown of Takapua here, across the road from the marae. And I went to Wellington College through to Victoria University, where I studied marine biology and ecology and biodiversity, as well as Māori. Now, the reason why I went into this space was that at the time, the Māori fishery settlement had taken place, and the Māori Fisheries Act was about to come into fruition. And I always knew from 5 years old that one day my vocation would lead me to working for my people to help move to improving social outcomes for Māori, and this was the way that it manifested itself at that time. And so I spent a good 10 years working as a fisheries scientist, and then into policy and economic development and trade for this specific purpose, to help advance Māori in these kind of areas. And that took me as far as Japan. I spent a year on scholarship in Japan, studying with a large multinational fisheries company called Nippon Suisan Kaisha, and then came back here and even spent a couple of years in Parliament working as an advisor to a minister. But what I found during that time was that the appetite for change within Māoridom in those halls wasn't what I thought was needed to make that transformative jump for our people. And it was through no one's fault, but if I was to look to drive these kind of changes, I knew that sustainable change could never be given to Māori, no matter how well-meaning from the government or from another agent. That kind of change had to be grown from within us. It had to be organic to Māori, and it had to be of and for us. And if we really do pursue this idea of Tino Rangatiratanga, it needs to be something that we can grasp. And my way of doing it was, I think that through economic emancipation, we can find our self-determination. Now that took me over to be exceedingly fortunate to get a Fulbright scholarship to go study at Stanford Graduate School of Business. And I did my master's over there, graduating in 2018. And since that point, I've come back and dedicated myself to impact investment and social impact through all the different hats that I wear. It also took me into occasion to be part of the Obama Foundation Leaders for the Asia Pacific, which is a group of 200 emerging leaders from around the region, looking to engage in a number of impactful spaces throughout our societies, whether that's environmental management and conservation, whether that's human rights, or in my case, Indigenous rights and economic development. And it was really a great occasion to come together and hear from some very like-minded people in a cohort of emerging leaders, because in this space it can be quite lonely. Particularly, I found growing up that there weren't many people in my spaces that were Māori and had the same upbringing that I had. And so being able to find people of similar pathways or similar ambitions, and to be able to do it in a way that still remains authentic to who I am as someone who holds strong to my Māoritanga, was something that I think is necessary for everyone. And now, in my current role as the Executive Director for Te Pūtea Whakatupu, we invest in education and training outcomes, as well as leadership development for Māori around the country. I'm based in Gisborne, but we're a national organization, and we work with urban Māori organizations as well as iwi around the country to make sure that we can help mobilize capital to create the future that we demand for our mokopuna, for our descendants.
Brilliant. Wow, a lot in there. And as I listen to each point, I'm sort of going, yeah, wow. And I think I've got through so many of those, I'm not quite sure where to start. But one thing I wanted to maybe ask is, with the Fulbright Scholarship and the Obama Foundation, has that given you sort of like a global network of people that you're still in contact with and communicating with on some sort of regular basis related to Indigenous efforts around the world?
Absolutely. And certainly, given the times that we're in, we get to share and commiserate over the existing circumstances. I mean, we've been watching Hurricane Ida go through the United States, and a bunch of my cohort went to New Orleans to spend some time there over Thanksgiving when I was studying there. So my thoughts certainly go out to the people that are going through those hardships at the moment. But I keep in pretty constant contact with my international network, And it's amazing how quickly, even though I was only in the United States for 1 year, how deep friendships you can build when you are similarly motivated towards creating, towards a kaupapa, or towards a shared purpose. And we maintain contact with the Indigenous Obama Foundation leaders in Hawaii and in the Southeast Asia, as well as throughout the Pacific, because when we boil it down, it's the same issues that we face all around the world. And if we are able, in any one of our environments, to be able to make gains in terms of moving and kaupapa forward, then it would be remiss of us not to share that with other people around, because we are all in this together. And I think as long as we are doing well, everybody's doing well.
Yep, absolutely, good point. And yeah, I think everyone's probably, the point that everyone is experiencing similar and going through similar changes. It won't be exactly the same, but the similarities, of course, due to the fact that it was in most part from the same cause of colonization by the British, and a couple of hundred years ago in various parts across the world. So coming to forward to today and finishing off this section before we go to the COVID part, the work that you're doing now is about enabling training across nationwide. So do you have training programs that you put through the different iwis and urban groups, or is it more about you funding and supporting them to pick and choose what's right for them? If you give people an idea of how it works, that'd be fantastic.
Sure, it is a bit of a spectrum. There's a bit of, so on the grand scheme of things, in the past we have operated pretty specifically on the grants and scholarships part of the spectrum, but more and more we've moved towards trying to make sure that we can use evidence and third-party research to identify how we can be more impactful with our activities. And so we do a mixture of both. We fund our strategic partners to deliver projects that have been developed in communities by people who can maximize their impact. So we fund a literacy and numeracy program for tamariki Māori around the country. In the South Island, that's delivered by Te Pūtahitanga of Te Waipounamu. In the North Island, that's by Whānau Order Commissioning Agency. And so that project has been about 5 years, $5 million in terms of the funding we've been putting in to drive those outcomes. And the way that we've considered it is that we've done our own research to say that we need to move 23,000 Māori from low to high skilled jobs in order to make significant gains in economic equity in this country. To do that, we need to essentially double the amount of rangatahi Māori who are leaving school with NCEA level 2 or higher. And if we can make sure that we focus on the componentry that helps them to get to that stage, the reading, the arithmetic, and then also the ability to choose and identify closely with STEM from a young age, then we can help chart people on a pathway towards greater prosperity, not just for themselves, but for their whānau and through their engagement in the community for those around them as well. We also have our own specific projects that we're developing and are delivering as well. So one of those is this idea of an associate directorship program, which we call He Tukutuku Koiora. And that's acknowledging that there is a large wave of Māori governance leadership that is needed as the Māori economy grows and matures. And we need to make sure that we can do that in a way that is authentic to our tikanga, but also captures the future issues and dynamics that we're going to meet. And so our project program is designed to teach both of those things, how to make tikanga-based governance decision-making, but also how to capture what the new issues are, such as climate-based risk reporting, data sovereignty, and operating in a COVID environment.
Yeah. So last little bit, because we've got to get the COVID, but this is so good, maybe we should book another session to do this in a bit more detail, because I was going to use the example, so I'm sure you'll know Kay Marie Dunn, working, I forget the name of the organisation, but they have funding to put Māori onto a Shopify course. So in my mind, I think that's so appropriate. Think of the amount of people who are doing their craft out there somewhere, whether it be teaching te reo, teaching haka, making traditional Māori items that potentially they would want to sell to the world, and the world wants to buy and consume. So having the ability to connect the dots between having them do their craft and the consumer on the other side of the world, with the Shopify course in the middle to be the conduit, that's the magic to help, in my mind, to help lift what's happening and what the scale of production now, to potentially take it global. And look, who knows, what might start off as a little craft sort of idea in the back room or the garage might turn into a global business. So never know unless they have the opportunity and know how to make that opportunity happen. So I think that's a good practical example. So now let's come back to our original topic of discussion for today, which is a future with COVID. And just to remind people, we chose the word Talanoa. It's a Pacific word that identifies across the Pacific and has a very important meaning, because it starts with listen and share with respect. And of course, out there we have a lot of keyboard warriors who are having a bit of fun with our AFQY posts and shares on Facebook predominantly. Doesn't happen so much on LinkedIn or elsewhere, but so the idea is please listen and share with respect, because everyone has a diverse view, and that's the aim, is to share and enlighten people that don't get to hear about the stuff that our different speakers will talk about. So with that, if I could ask you to share your, what we call a 5-minute focus on a future with COVID, and then we'll start looking at the bits and the detail of it.
Fantastic. Well, I think the topic that we talked about previously on how to do this was this idea of an Aotearoa economy, and how COVID can potentially be this economic singularity event, a point at which the previous rules that applied to a situation are no longer able to be predictive or to be applicable in that comes afterwards. Now, my thoughts on the matter are grounded in a whakatawaki, or a proverb, and that proverb is "E rua te kūmara me te Pūtea, kaore he hua ona ki tuatu I te whāngai tāngata." And what that means is that money is like a kūmara, in that its only value lies in its ability to sustain people. Now, the reason why I say that is, well, there is a report that's just come out called Te Ohanga Māori, which was commissioned by Reserve Bank and produced by Burl. And it has given an estimation of the Māori economy at $68.7 billion as of 2018. So before COVID came along, but it's enough of a time path to give us some sort of scope as to the growth of this fledgling or burgeoning Māori economy. Now,
could I ask, could we give some perspective if we compare the size of the Māori economy to the size of the New Zealand economy? Like 67 billion is a big number. They took $60 billion in lending for COVID, but the government took it for the country. So people are pretty accustomed to that 60 billion being a big number, and 67 is bigger. So by comparison, do you have what the New Zealand economy number happens to be?
I don't have the New Zealand economy number, but what I do have is the kind of the growth rates that we've been experiencing. Okay. And that's what I think is more important, because I think this number 68 billion is it's a bit of a dart throw, and that's with absolute all respect to Burl. I think they do a great job. But when we look at how we qualify this Māori economy, they talk about asset base, income, expenditure, and GDP of self-identified Māori economic actors. But I don't think the numbers are the important part. It's an understanding the characteristics that make up the Māori economy. And we know that 70% of that is held by self-employed or small businesses. And if we look at the previous Burl report that was done in 2013, since that period, the Māori economy has grown by 60%, or over 10% year on year. And in the same time period, New Zealand's economy grew by half of that, by 5.5%. And so what does that mean? It's a company that, well, where the wealth is distributed amongst small holders, and particularly it dispels a lot of notions that all of the wealth is held within large iwi in corporations and
that was going to be a question.
Yeah, there certainly is an element of that, but more and more we're seeing the wealth generation in these small enterprise kind of areas. And I think that's an important point to know. And we're also seeing a diversification away from being solely focused on primary industries, as has been a legacy of the past, and moving more towards having a more diverse portfolio as iwi. And as this matures, we get to make a decision. If I go back to the kūmara quote that I talked about, we get to have an idea of how we put kūmara economics to work, not just how we're growing that asset base, but how we're putting it to work to change the world for our tamariki and our mokopuna and our descendants. And I think it is important to take the emphasis off of the first half, off of the number, the 68 billion, and put it on the second half, because it means nothing if we're not changing our people's lives. And there are some fantastic examples that have come about, both in the pre-COVID and then the post-COVID period, of where we've seen this in action. We talk about Ngāi Tahu's Whairawa iwi saver scheme, or we look at Ngāti Whātua Warake and how they ensure they give health insurance to all of their tribal members. These are great examples of where the wealth is being put to work in a way that really changes day-to-day outcomes for our people. And then I think if we look at how Māori communities responded to COVID, like we saw a real showcase of the power of tikanga-led action. The distribution of kai and hygiene packs. I spoke to CEOs in Northland who had delivered over 7,000 food and health hygiene packs in the first lockdown, and we saw the iwi checkpoints and the hapu checkpoints being placed up in order to make sure that health was the first and foremost priority. I've spoken to CEOs who said they were willing to burn the balance sheet in order to ensure the well-being of their people. And these are the kind of the concepts, when we put people at the heart of what we do, that I think can be captured in what the Aotearoa economy looks like coming out of COVID. We get a chance to redesign it, to reshape it. I mean, if you've read Donut Economics, Kate Raworth talks about, don't wait for economic growth to reduce inequality. It won't. Instead, create an economy that is distributed by design. And when I talk about this being distributed by design, I talk specifically about contextualizing our economic success, both within the context of the collective, but also of the surrounding environment in which we operate. And we also have to understand what the definition is, both for us now in present day, but also how are we making mokopuna decisions or grandchildren decisions on a day-to-day basis. And when I talk about that and this intergenerational focus, I'm involved with Whakatupu Incorporation. I'm one of the whānau members, and we have a 500-year business plan. So how do you reconcile, if you look at best practice finance, in saying $1 next year is worth less than $1 today? But if I'm trying to be a good ancestor, I am incentivized to earn $1 for my grandchild before $1 for myself. So how do I bring these two dichotomous mindsets together? But you know, it might seem like a struggle, but that, if we look at it, that's the way to build in resilience to the grand changes that we're facing at the moment. So how do we make mokopuna decisions, take the focus off of ourselves and off of our own day-to-day, quarter-quarter returns, and build for sustainable, holistic prosperity, not just for us, but for our descendants and for our surrounding communities as we move forward. And I think if we do this, there are some organizations throughout Aotearoa that do demonstrate this, or might be ahead of the curve, but I do not think that these issues that we're talking about are the unique space for Māori. I think there's a shared values that we have, and we've had these conversations more and more. We're caring for each other and how they interact both within the economy and in society is becoming more of a hardline must-have. And this idea of making sure that our interactions with natural resources and the environment is not a zero sum for how we are shaping our economic growth. And so whilst I like to put a Māori phrase on it, that because that's my background, I think this is a concept, this Aotearoa economy, where it's inclusive, adaptive, and intergenerational in nature, can be something that we all own and that we all can agree at this point in time, that this singularity event, to say these are the rules that are going to guide us into the future. An economy that's distributive by design, that's intergenerational by design, and that cares for people first and foremost.
Yeah. So much there. And I always like to, so first of all, I did look up the number for context. I know it's not important for the concept you just shared, but New Zealand economy is 193 billion. So 65. So what my aim was to be able to say, well done for achieving X% of the New Zealand economy. That must feel good, because we're looking at about a third. Yeah, a bit under a third, roughly a third. So I just think it's a great accomplishment. There's not enough pats on the back and well dones for the well dones, but there's plenty of bad news in the news, right? So I always like to give credit where credit's due, whether that's to the All Blacks for a great win on the weekend, or to the Māori community for building a $67 billion economy within the New Zealand economy, within it. So, it's not like it's $2. If it was $2, people might be like, well, what have you been doing? But 67 billion. So I think big ups, well done. And that little example I gave about Kay Marie's work, where one of the things she does is enabling Shopify training. You talk about 70% of that figure being from small business operators. How pertinent is online e-commerce training for them, or for their mates who are looking at what their mates are doing, going, how do you do that? Well, go on a training course, you'll be sweet. I oversimplify it, but the big picture stuff that I really get into, like as Pākehā, or just as a human, I have never really liked the fact that the capitalist world, people can get really rich and people can get homeless, to put it bluntly. And when you think about it, whatever it is, I always think, how can you do that to another human? How could you let that happen to another human? And I'll call it the Western way. The Western way is very much, you as an individual have every opportunity to succeed or fail. Whatever happens to you is your responsibility. Te Ao Māori, it's much more of a community operation. So whether you succeed or fail is large part to you, but also large part to the community and the whānau. So if you're sinking and going down, rather than just being discarded and go, well, you're one of those homeless people, we'll give you 50 cents. It's like, no, we'll bring you in, support you, help you, get you back on your feet, so that you can then help contribute to helping the next person who might need help, right? So that some pretty old sayings, I guess, of profit over people or people over profit. I think quite clearly people over profit is the way, and your whakatauki around the sweet potato is only there to sustain the people is a beautiful way of putting it. I always question, why do we need another $300,000 car or $1 million car that one person's going to buy? Do that one person, while they can, do they really need it? Okay, it's nice, got a great engine, but do you really need it? While there's people dying out there, do you really need it? And I get a bit of flack for that, because people always say, people always attack the rich, they should be congratulating the rich. It's like, well, everyone has a different opinion, but I'll stop there, because I could go on, and this is your show today. So some really great views. And I guess what's the next step? Like, how do we get the Te Ao Māori approach more widespread across Aotearoa? How do we get that adoption?
Well, I think we had a really good example of that model being taken up by the general community. If we look at the Te Tauihu intergenerational strategy, now it was a process that was run. It was led by Whakatupu Corporation, but it had buy-in from everyone throughout the community. So the councils were on board. local businesses were on board, and they ran, very similar to this session, they ran a number of different panels talking about what's important and what do things mean in terms of different pertinent issues, both now and into the future. And it was a way to take a concept that is pretty abstract if you're not used to thinking in intergenerational terms, and applying to what it means for you on your day-to-day decision making. And I think that's the key part, is that how do we take the time, and we don't brandish people who don't think in these terms as being selfish. That's not the case at all. It's just how do we open up and give them the space to go into an area where they can start capturing the potential of what changing this thinking looks like. And when people are given the time and the respect to move in that space themselves authentically, then they absolutely own it and take it forward on their own volition. And that's always been such a much more effective way than dragging people kicking and screaming into a future that they don't inherently understand or want. And so it's a bit of a hurry up and wait approach, but you need to bring people along the way. And I remember Rachel Tolele, one of my mentors, she told me, a leader takes someone to a horizon they can't yet see. And this is a bit of that. We can't necessarily, I don't know what the world's going to look like in 200 years' time when we're planning for. But I know that the values and the principles that I am instilling now within my whānau, within our businesses, they came from 200 years prior to me. And they haven't changed over that time period, and they won't change in 200 years' time. Now, if those descendants can still maintain the same values that helped our people traverse the Pacific Ocean, that helped us traverse COVID and global financial crises, they'll help them in their situations that require resilience in the future, even though the dynamic of that context will change. So you write your values in pen and your strategies and tactics in pencil. And we'll write the pen now because it's what was written for us previously. And the pencil is up for our future generations to decide and how they react to that.
I like that. Write the values in pen and the strategies and tactics in pencil. It's a really nice way of, I've not heard that before, and it makes complete sense. You know, we're talking about Here Tarangi earlier and Whare Haora, and that's another great example of Māori economy, right? So when Here presented at the Digital Divide event that I was the MC of, she spoke about the values, and she said it took us, I can't remember the exact numbers, but let's say it took me 3 months to work out the technology, but over a year to work out our values. And when I heard that, I kind of thought, hey, what? Get a workshop together, get it banged out in a couple of days. What does it take a year for? The irony might be in the fact that in my 13 years of operation of AFQY, I've never actually settled on my values, because I put something down and then I think it's not meaningful enough, and I've never actually done the work on it. But when I reflect back now, I go, yeah, actually, that's probably quite good sense. And, again, reflects on the values and pen and strategy and tactics and pencil. So we did have a point here from Paul while I was speaking. I was popping up on screen. You probably better position to answer it than I am. But capitalism has many strengths, as it does have weaknesses. And my short one is that yes, and I try not to put labels like capitalism, socialism, or anything on it, because we could be talking about something that's like a concertina, this idea that's like this, and people put a finite label on it, and then no one listens to it, right? But in terms of capitalism, are there what strengths might you share that are things that do weave from capitalism into what you are looking to achieve?
Well, look, I think that one of the messages that I try to get across is that it's a completely arbitrary demarcation between capitalism, between economic pursuit and social pursuit for Māoridom. So when my ancestor Parore Te Awha signed the Declaration of Independence in 1835, that was both something that was to drive the social progress of his iwi, but also the economic development of their people, because that enabled them to trade internationally. Because they were trading in Sydney at that point, but they needed an international flag in order to be let into the ports. And so they saw that as an opportunity to do both, to establish a nation that was recognized internationally, but also to pursue these economic lofty goals. And it was never something that was separated. When Te Rauparaha was trading with the whalers and fishing vessels in the Cook Strait, all of that economic activity was designed to feed and sustain his people. And there's accounts previously of chiefs of economically wealthy tribes. They didn't have any significant increase in their personal wealth as, say, anyone else in their tribe. But all that happened, the lake level didn't rise. What happened was the water flow rose in terms of the distributive nature of a chief to both his people and his allies increased. And so while yes, I absolutely agree that capitalism has a set of rules established by the market in order to drive how we pursue economic gain today. But what really matters is how we use that. We build it on a premise that human nature is both cooperative as well as competitive, and that capitalism can be reimagined to also be a system that ensures that we have, as a society, equal rights to dignity, to security, and to the freedom to engage in both economy, society, and democracy. And that's for us to decide. And it is not some completely segregated force that's operating independently of us. I mean, markets have always been subject to the will and the rules that are set by the legislators and by the business minds of the day. So it is up to us to decide how that serves us, not how we serve it.
Yeah. I love the old saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I don't know if there is a similar whakatauki that relates to the same meaning. But, you think about, you can put all these rules and regulations in place, but people will still do what they need to do. And a really extreme case of that is, say, a black market, or or gangs. Gangs exist to support a group of people. They support each other where they weren't supported anywhere else, and take aside the, I guess, stereotype and expectation of all the illegal stuff that goes with the word gang. But the stuff that is there is the fact that they support each other when no one else does. So yeah, some really great points and interesting points. We've just sort of gone over a little bit of time, which is okay by me. You might be having your next meeting or catching up with the International Obama Federation crew, or helping somewhere in Gisborne or around the country with helping Māori rise up into a great position. So if we could, hopefully have given you enough time there to think of your closing remarks, the message you'd like to leave people with. I don't know if this is a message in pen or a message in pencil, but I'll leave that up to you and look forward to your closing remarks.
Yeah, I think the important thing that it comes down to, and what I really want to drill home, is that the Aotearoa economy is something that that it falls within our realms of decisions, and we can decide how we get to write that script moving forward. And it is not going to be one group in society that dictates how everyone else moves forward. It's an opportunity for us to come together in a way that we never have in our country's short history. I think the last time that we've had such unanimity in direction and decision was during the World Wars. And I think this is a chance where we get to stop and we get to reflect on ourselves and how things have changed and how the dynamics of our society have changed over this period, and decide what really matters to us the most. And whilst we have some people who have more fully formed whakaaro or ideas of what that looks like within their own cultural characteristics, it's a time that we can share and embed them in the fabric of our economy moving forward. And it's a time for us to do that in a way that we can all decide what it means for us individually. What does making a mokopuna decision mean for an immigrant versus a fifth generation Pākehā New Zealander versus say a 27th generation descendant of Tānu waka like I am. These are the same conversations happening on the tapestry of human interaction in Aotearoa. And we need to understand that it is a tapestry, and then we're not separate threads operating in an ether. And how tightly woven that tapestry is completely within our own determination at this point. And so I'm very optimistic, despite the effect of COVID on both New Zealand and the globe, despite the impending shift in climate change. I think we've never seen a point in time that we have been as we've had the potential to unite like we do now, and potential to take that unity of optimism and thought and drive it towards positive outcomes for our entire country. So I'm looking forward to seeing when that future comes to be, and my children and their children get to enjoy the fruits of that prosperity. Beautiful.
Tahua. So some amazing thoughts in there. I'm going to have to replay this back and take them one by one. But the big consensus I get there is around, or the big thought I'm getting there is around the Aotearoa economy and the potential for us to unite. And, you know, I think every Kiwi, for whatever experience or worldview or life experience they have, probably will be quite grateful and thankful for that moment. And so I wonder what it would take to get every Kiwi to work towards uniting and working together in some form of kindness. You know, I think we've always got to always got to understand that there will be someone who doesn't quite paddle the waka the same way as 99% of us, and that is going to happen. But if we were to get 95 to 99% of us all paddling the same waka the same way, I think we'd probably call that success. And the statistical outliers might get thrown out of the boat. But you know, I want to say thank you so much for your time today. And if I can say thank you very much as tēnā rawa atu koe. Thank you very much. And that you get on with your day, and look forward to everyone's involvement and discussion around this kōrero. Thank you very much once again.
Tēnā koe, Ryan. Tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora.